Royal divorces don't just end marriages, they can decide the fate of children. In palaces across Europe, custody battles have torn families apart. Mothers cut off, fathers left powerless, children raised under palace control. A princess forced to surrender her children after a bitter split. A queen stripped of her rights to young heirs, despite public sympathy. And a prince who could only see his children on the crown's terms. So which royals lost custody of their children, and why? Here are the 12 royals who lost custody of their kids in divorces. At number 12, we have Jaime de Marichalar of Spain. Jaime de Marichalar, once married to Infant Elena of Spain, experienced a significant personal setback when he lost primary custody of their two children following their divorce. The couple married in 1995 in a widely celebrated royal wedding and had two children together, Philippe I and Victoria Federica. For over a decade, they appeared as one of Spain's most visible aristocratic families, balancing royal duties and family life. Their marriage, however, began to unravel after 2001 when Jaime suffered a mild stroke. His health complications, coupled with reports of incompatibility and growing distance between the couple, led to a formal separation in 2007. By 2009, their divorce was finalized in Madrid, making headlines across Spain. The custody of their two children became the most delicate issue. Spanish courts generally uphold joint parental authority, and in this case, both parents retained legal rights in decision-making. However, the court awarded primary physical custody to infant Elena. The reasoning emphasized her established residence in Madrid, her position within the royal family, and her capacity to provide continuity in the child's schooling and social lives. In contrast, Jaime's declining health and diminished public role weighed against. As a result, Fräulein and Victoria Federica grew up primarily under their mother's care, with Jaime receiving visitation rights and shared input on major decisions. At number 11, we have Count Jefferson von Klein-Elgut. Jefferson married Princess Alexandra the 6th of June 1998, and they have two children, Count Richard and Countess Ingrid. They lived in Paris for years, later moving to Germany's Hildesheim Castle in 2013. May 18, 2017, the couple announced that they would divorce. In the press statement quoted by Royal Central, Princess Alexandra said that they decided to end their marriage, but they still cooperate on parenting of their two children. The same report noted that the children would continue at their current schools and stay with their mother. After the split, Alexandra later formed a relationship with Count Michael Alefeld Lorvig-Lyle and married him May 18, 2019, and she resides at Augustkov Castle in Denmark. Public statements confirm Jefferson's intention to cooperate on parenting in the continuity of the children's schooling immediately after the announcement, and there was no disclosed court order. The reason publicly given for the post-separation parenting setup was a mutual agreement to cooperate and maintain stability for the kids, rather than contest custody decisions. However, there is no official publicly available court judgment setting out of a custody award for their children, Frederick and Ingrid. Contemporary reporting emphasized cooperative co-parenting rather than litigation, and did not specify a legal custody parent. And despite all this, the wife was the primary custodial parent of their children. Next, we have Princess Kalina of Bulgaria. Princess Kalina of Bulgaria, the only daughter of Tsar Simeon II, was faced with a custody loss of her son following the separation from her husband that left her son largely with his father. Kalina married Antonio Quintin Munoz, a Spanish adventurer, in 2002 and welcomed their son Simeon Hassan in 2007. For many years, the family moved frequently, residing in Morocco for a time, then in Spain. In 2015, the couple and their son were living near Rabat, Morocco. However, in the early 2020s, Princess Kalina had returned to Bulgaria alone and was often seen at events without Kitten. In 2022, Bulgarian media buzzed with reports that Kalina and Kitten were living apart. Their key indications came when Simeon Hassan, their teenager, was noted to be attending school in Spain, while Princess Kalina remained based in Bulgaria at the royal family's mountain estate. This implied that their son was staying mainly with his father. And according to Hello magazine, although no official announcement of divorce had been made, Kalina herself alluded to living a solitary life in Bulgaria's Arela Mountains, focused on nature and her dogs, notably without mention of her son. Meanwhile, Antonio has been seen in Spain with Simeon Hassan at various engagements, enforcing that the boy resides under Kitten's supervision. The reason behind this de facto custody allocation was his son's well-being. The next custody battles weren't just private pains. They involved the Duchess losing her daughters, a French prince surrendering his only child, and even a ruling monarch whose children were raised outside his palace. At number 9, we have Sarah, Duchess of York. Sarah Ferguson, known as the Duchess of York, navigated a highly publicized split in which she lost the custody of her two daughters. Though the royal family's arrangements meant the children spent more time in their father's household, Sarah and Prince Andrew divorced in 1996 after a 4-year separation. In their divorce settlement, their agreement to joint custody of Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugene, who were just 7 and 6 years old respectively. In practice, however, the girls remained living primarily within the royal sphere at Sunnington Notting Hill Park with Prince Andrew, especially during the work week, while Sarah was often traveling or based elsewhere. According to People magazine, upon their separation in 1992, Sarah left the marital home, and it was understood that the former couple shared daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, amicably. However, as a non-working royal, Sarah had to forge a new life outside the palace, including international business endeavors, resulting in the girls being under their father's roof much of the time. The Queen herself had a legal interest in her minor granddaughter's guardianship, though not exercised. It underscored that the children's residence would still be with their prince father. For example, when the Duke and Duchess of York separated, the palace stated that the children would continue living within the royal household, making Sarah more distant from her children. Next, we have Prince Charles-Philippe d'Orléans, Duke of Anjou. Prince Charles, Duke of Anjou, a member of the French royal house, underwent a high-profile separation in which he effectively ceded day-to-day custody of his only child. Charles-Philippe married Diana Alvarez Pereira de Mello in 2008. The couple had one daughter, Princess Isabella, born 2012. According to royal musings, by 2016 the marriage was reportedly strained, and they have formally announced their divorce in late 2022. Long before the legal divorce, Charles and Diana had been living apart, and he spent a considerable amount of time in his family circles across Europe, while Diane resided primarily in Portugal with her young daughter. From this point of separation, Isabel remained with her mother, meaning Charles-Philippe saw his child only periodically, and after the divorce was finalized, the prince quickly went on to remarry, further solidifying that Isabel would continue to live full-time with her mother rather than with her father. The custody arrangement, though private, is understood to grant Diana Alvarez Pereira de Mello primary custody, with Charles-Philippe having visitation rights. At the time of the split, Isabel was about 4 years old and deeply integrated into her mother's life in Portugal. The Duke of Anjou's own statement upon divorce emphasized that the former couple would, quote, maintain a relationship based on friendship, cooperation, and the parenting of their daughter. At number 7, we have Prince Albert of Monaco. Prince Albert II of Monaco provides a unique case of custody dynamics in the royal context. He acknowledged 2 children born out of wedlock before his marriage, but neither was raised under his roof as a child. Albert, who ascended the throne in 2005, publicly confirmed paternity of his 2 illegitimate children, Jasmine Grace Grimaldi and Alexandra Grimaldi, both born to mothers with whom Albert had short relationships. In both instances, the children's upbringing was undertaken by their mothers, with Prince Albert playing a financial and occasional visitation role. For example, Jasmine Grace was raised in California by her mother, Tamara Rotolo, and did not even meet Albert in person until she was in her late teens. Alexander was raised in France by his mother, Nicole Coste, a former Air France flight attendant. Albert provided for him, per an understanding that Alexander did not live in Monaco's palace during childhood. Under Monegasque law, illegitimate offspring cannot be in the line of succession. This legal reality meant that the mothers retained full custody rights, and Albert did not pursue any custody claim. In 2011, Albert married Princess Charlene and later had legitimate twins. By then, Jasmine was an adult and Alexander was around 11, neither integrated into the royal household. Prince Albert has since developed closer relationships with both Jasmine and Alexander now. The next cases weren't about scandal, but heartbreak. A prince who gave up all 4 of his children, another who watched his sons move away with their mother, and a king whose secret daughter was raised in silence. Next, we have Prince Jean of Luxembourg. Prince Jean of Luxembourg relinquished custody of his 4 children following his 2004 divorce from his wife, Helene Vester. Jean married Helene, a French commodore, in 1987, and they had 4 kids together, born between 1986 and 1992, while living in a relatively private life in Paris. According to royal musings, in 1986, Prince Jean had already renounced his succession rights for himself and his future offspring, in part to married on equal terms. When the marriage failed, the couple separated around 2003, and their divorce was finalized December 2004. At the time, the children ranged from about 12 to 18 years old. Although details of the custody arrangement was kept private, it is known that the children continued to reside in France with their mother, with Helene after the split. All 4, Princess Marie Gabriel and Princess Constantine, Wenceslas and Carl Joan of Nassau, were born and raised in Paris, and they remained there based post-divorce, indicating that Helene Vester retained day-to-day custody. Prince Jean, who by 2004 was spending more time in Luxembourg and preparing to remarry, did not contest this outcome. In fact, earlier in 2004, Grand Duke Henry elevated the children's titles to Prince and Princess of Nassau, perhaps to ensure they kept a form of royal status despite living outside the Grand Duchy with their mother. At number 5, we have Prince Joachim of Denmark. Joachim experienced a partial loss of custody of his 2 older children following his 2005 divorce from Alexandra, Countess of Fredericksburg. Joachim, the younger son of Queen Margaret II, married Alexandra in 1995, and they had 2 sons, Prince Nikolai and Prince Felix. When according to The Independent, the couple announced their separation in 2004 and divorced the next year, Denmark's first royal divorce, you should know, in nearly 160 years. In their divorce agreement, the pair formally agreed to joint custody of the boys. However, In practice, Alexandra became the primary residential parent after moving out. She initially stayed at the royal estate in Amalienborg with the children and later purchased a home in Copenhagen, taking Nikolai and Felix with her. Prince Joachim continued to have a significant presence and visitation. The former couple made efforts to co-parent amicably, but he no longer lived with the sons full-time. Notably, the palace announced Alexandra would move with their two sons to Copenhagen after the split, while Joachim remained at the Schackenberg Castle, all in Jutland, for some time. The reason for this arrangement was largely practical. The young princes were very attached to their mother, and Alexandra, a Hong Kong-born commoner, planned to rebuild her life in Copenhagen, including a new marriage in 2007. Danish media reported that when Alexandra remarried, Prince Joachim consented to the children continuing to primarily live with her. Next, we have King Albert II of Belgium. Albert II, the former king of the Belgians, famously lost the custody to parent his extramarital daughter, now Princess Delphine of Belgium, as the child was kept secret and raised solely by her mother. In the 1960s, then Prince Albert had an affair with Baroness Sybil de Longchamps. This liaison resulted in the birth of their daughter Delphine in 1968. To avoid scandal in the public, the affair and Delphine's paternity were all hushed up, and Sybil moved abroad for a period of time, and Delphine grew up believing Sybil's husband was her father. Albert had no role in her upbringing. According to Vanity Fair, it was only in the 1990s, through a biography of Queen Paola, that the existence of Albert's secret child was publicly suggested. Even then, Albert II consistently denied paternity. Delphine Boyle was thus raised entirely by her mother, away from the royal family. She later recounted how she had no security or protection from the palace during her youth, an implicit acknowledgement that King Albert provided no paternity care or custody. In 2013, after Albert's abdication, Delphine initiated a paternity lawsuit. The court's DNA test in 2019 proved Albert II was her biological father. In 2020, he officially acknowledged Delphine, who was legally granted the title of Princess of Belgium. By this time, Delphine was 52 years old, with children of her own, meaning the recognition had no impact. The final custody losses were the most dramatic. A princess stripped of her sons, a father whose daughter grew up far from him, and a prince who saw his boys raised almost entirely by their mother. At number 3, we have Princess Maria de Gloria de Orleans Bragança. Maria de Gloria, a Brazilian-born royal and member of the Portuguese imperial family, lost custody of her 3 sons after a 1985 divorce from Alexander, Crown Prince of Yugoslavia. Maria de Gloria married Crown Prince Alexander in 1972 and had 3 boys. According to Tatler, when the marriage ended in 85, the couple agreed that the boys, then under the age of 5, would remain in Alexander's care. In the divorce settlement, Crown Prince Alexander was awarded custody of all 3 sons. This outcome was unusual for the time, as mothers often retain young children. However, Alexander's position as a pretender to a royal throne and with substantial support from his family enabled him to secure custody. The boys were subsequently raised primarily by Alexander and his second wife, Princess Catherine, splitting their upbringing between the United Kingdom and the United States in exile. Maria de Gloria, at this time, for her part, remarried in 1985 to a Spanish nobleman and settled in Spain. Her contact with her sons became limited to holidays and visits, meaning that she did not have day-to-day custody as they grew up. Royal chroniclers note that Alexander's stepmother, Queen Alexandra of Yugoslavia, and later his second wife, played maternal roles in the boys' lives. It phased out this way because Maria de Gloria was moving on to a new marriage and a life in Spain. Next, we have Prince Ernst of Hanover. Ernst, head of the defunct Hanoverian royal house, effectively lost custody of his only child with Princess Caroline of Monaco due to their prolonged separation. According to Tatler, Ernst married Princess Caroline in 1999, and they had 1 daughter together, Princess Alexandra of Hanover, before the couple became estranged in the mid-2000s. By 2009, Ernst and Caroline were living apart, and Caroline returned to Monaco with young Alexandra, while Ernst remained largely in Europe amid personal controversies. The result was that Alexandra was raised almost entirely by her mother, Caroline, within the princely family of Monaco, with minimal involvement from her father during her childhood. In a recent interview, Alexandra herself acknowledged growing up as a daughter of the Monaco royal family, all with an estranged father, of course, Prince Ernst. Caroline provided a stable home in Monaco, while Alexandra attended school and family events alongside her maternal half-siblings at the same time. Meanwhile, Ernst August's absence was attributed to his ongoing health and legal troubles. While no formal custody lawsuit took place, Caroline and Ernst August never formally divorced, though living apart. The de facto custody arrangement saw Princess Caroline as the sole day-to-day parent, and by mutual understanding, Alexandra would reside with Caroline, and Ernst August consented to this arrangement by default, given his personal issues. And at number 1, we have Prince Louis of Luxembourg. Louis, the 3rd son of Grand Duke Henry, divorced Princess Tessie in 2019, of all things after 13 years of marriage. According to Hello magazine, in the divorce settlement, Tessie Tessie was granted primary custody for their two young sons, Prince Gabriel and Prince Noah. Following their separation in 2019, Tessie relocated to London with the boys, while Prince Louis moved to Paris. As a result, Louis no longer had his children residing with him full-time. The Luxembourg Palace continued and confirmed that Tessie and their children would remain in London and that Louis would reside elsewhere. Louis has continued to have visitations, but their children's day-to-day upbringing has been solely with their mother. The reason behind this custody outcome all stemmed from Tessie being the children's primary caregiver and her decision to file for divorce in the UK, considered a favorable jurisdiction for the financially weaker spouse. Prince Louis, who renounced his succession rights in 2006, did not contest the arrangement and agreed to legal custody, though the boys live with Tessie. This case is notable as one of the few in European royalty where the father did not retain primary residence of the children post-divorce, instead seeing them mainly during school holidays and visits. Prince Louis has publicly supported his ex-wife's parenting and indicated that the children's stability was the priority in their amicable split. With this, we end today's video. We'll be back with a new video shortly, and until then, happy watching and do subscribe to our channel if you still haven't.